By now, I think we've all had enough of the anti-vaxxers holding us up from controlling the COVID-19 pandemic. So, look, the numbers of COVID have not gotten that much better. In fact, they're still pretty bad, and not as bad as, of course, they were at the beginning of the pandemic when it was really just taking off. We didn't have vaccines. Thankfully, we do. But still, we have an average of 150,000 new COVID cases a day. There are 1,500 daily deaths, adding to the 653,000 Americans so far that we've counted dead from the start of the pandemic. And that number is likely higher. So now, interestingly enough, or I should say devastatingly enough, that is sure to eclipse the death toll from the 1918 influenza pandemic, and it's also far greater than every U.S. conflict that we've ever been in except for the Civil War. In short, it's still not good out there. It's still not great. So now, what's going on? President Biden, Joe Biden ran on trying to control the pandemic. And so far, you see these numbers, and they look fairly disastrous. And so a lot of Americans have been calling on the Biden administration to do something. So now right-wingers will do that, but they'll do it disingenuously because, Biden says he's going to control the pandemic. Well, okay, but you're not doing your part in getting vaccinated or wearing masks. So you just can't sit there and complain when you're doing absolutely nothing to help the situation. But there are legitimate critics on the left that have been calling on Biden, hey, we need to do something more. Maybe we need to start doing mandates. You need to get involved and really start to push vaccinations and face coverings and things like that. And so we're in luck. That's kind of what he did. So now, in a speech yesterday, he announced a new plan. That's a 6-prong plan to try to deal with COVID-19. And here's some of what he said. Take a look.
What more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see? We've made vaccinations free, safe, and convenient. The vaccine has FDA approval. Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. So please do the right thing. But just don't take it from me. Listen to the voices of unvaccinated Americans who are lying in hospital beds, taking their final breath saying, if only I'd gotten vaccinated. If only. It's a tragedy. Please don't let it become yours.
All right, so look, he's right. We have been patient. We have tried to explain it calmly, rationally. We've used facts, studies, information backed up by the majority of the medical community. We've vouched for its safety. We've shown studies on the efficacy. And of course, right now, you can look around and you see all these people that are vaccinated, and you compare that to the section of the population that isn't vaccinated, and you look and you see, well, who's in the hospital more? Who's dying of COVID more? 97% of all hospitalizations are among the unvaxxed. 99% of deaths are among the unvaxxed. So there's a significant issue here, but that really points to the fact that the vaccine works. And so we have encouraged people to take it. We have tried to combat the disinformation, which is everywhere, and yet still, no. They refuse to take it. They refuse it. So now it's time for hardballs. On your face, in your face, on your chin. Okay, you asked for it. You want the hardballs? We'll give you the hardballs. All right? So now Biden had put out a 6-point plan. I'm going to read some of that, of course. Biden first directed the Labor Department to require all employers with more than 100 workers to require either the vaccine or regular testing, with a penalty, of course, of $14,000 on the employer for every occurrence. So if they're not mandating vaccines for people to go to work in these big companies, the company themselves are going to lose money. And so, of course, that's a stick. They're saying, here you go. You do this or you do testing, by the way. And so, by the way, there is an option here in this to avoid getting the vaccine. So now, the White House also says that they'll strengthen vaccination requirements for most federal workers, but remove the option for workers to get regular testing rather than, as I said, the vaccine. He'll also sign an executive order requiring the same standard from federal contractors. As I mentioned, there is an option, probably so that right-wingers would not scream bloody murder, but of course, you don't know right-wingers. You're never going to please them. You're just never going to please them at all. So now, by the way, getting tested weekly does kind of dilute the effectiveness of the mandate, makes it not really a mandate. And of course, there's for people who don't actually work, there's that as well. And so, look, I get it. The hope here is that the testing is so absolutely annoying that people are just going to give up and they're going to go and get the vaccine. I mean, and that makes sense, right? So now, if you test positive for COVID, you miss work, you miss a paycheck, you have to quarantine, of course, and then hopefully that consideration might make people want to give up and go get the vaccine. The whole purpose is to make things, to not getting the vaccine so fucking annoying that you say, okay, fine. All right. Now, another part of the plan is readying a booster. Now, I'm skeptical on the booster. The science doesn't really back that up specifically. So far, there's really no indication that a booster is necessary at this point. Although the CDC website does suggest that people should not get a booster until at least 8 months after getting their second dose. And those likely to need a booster are really older Americans and first responders. And so I wouldn't even focus on the booster. I wouldn't even talk about it right now. Okay? Again, that just kind of feeds into, well, the vaccine works and we don't need a booster, right? And all that disinformation. So now, again, I don't quite agree with his focus on the booster. I don't think we quite need it yet. We need to get this under control first, all right? And have more studies on the long-term, effectiveness of these vaccines further out. Now, another part of the plan is increasing an order on testing, right? So now, testing, as well as he's going to basically invoke the Defense Production Act to increase the amount of tests that are produced and spread around so that obviously we can do more testing. Plus, you also have an increase in the use of monoclonal antibody treatments. So monoclonal antibodies are actually pretty effective at treating people with a possibility of high progression of this virus. And so that's actually one of the effective treatments. In fact, it was so effective, that's one of the ones that Donald Trump got. And it's very likely one of the ones that actually helped Joe Rogan, if he indeed, of course, had gotten COVID in the first place, because there is confusion on that as well. And so the way the reason I say that is because, well, not long afterwards, he ended up actually having 2 negative tests, meaning that he might not have even had COVID at the first time. He might have actually had a false positive. And so you don't really know. So he might have just thrown the kitchen sink at nothing. I don't know. That's it, right? Monoclonal antibodies, though, they actually do work. Ivermectin does not. And so it's good that they're focusing on cures that actually do, well, I wouldn't say cures, but treatments that actually do work, pairing them with the vaccine, and of course with masking in schools and things like that. So now, one thing I do not agree with this plan that was outlined is to open the schools, or to keep the schools open. And there's a reason for that. As long as you have governors that are fighting mask mandates, and the fact that kids under 12 are still not allowed to be vaccinated, schools are going to be a hotbed of infection, unfortunately. Even though children are, of course, the least likely age group to get sick or die from the virus, they can still spread it to family members who are unvaccinated or immunocompromised. And so that is an issue. And of course, children are being hospitalized, again, at lower numbers, much lower numbers than adults, they are getting hospitalized, and they are dying as a result of not being vaccinated, and of course, the lack of mask mandates in these schools. I think the rush to get people into schools, both under Trump and under Biden, was really about just getting the adults back to work. And so, hey, the corporations, the donors really want to get people back to work and start producing profit for corporate owners, the CEOs, and things like that. And by the way, the so-called labor shortage, which it's not really so much of a labor shortage as the fact that there are places that don't offer good enough pay, benefits, or childcare. There are people with children that, can't or won't send their kids back to school because, again, you don't have affordable childcare, and you have schools that are still closed. And so, or again, they choose not to because these schools are fairly unsafe. It's interesting, though. There is a $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation framework, and one of the ideas that's supposed to go in there is free childcare. Now, corporate Democrats, unfortunately, are blocking that, and so I think Joe Biden needs to get tougher on Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, people like that, that are blocking his agenda in order to pass it while we still have time. Because 2022, that midterm is coming, and if we don't do something and pass this, this gigantic infrastructure bill, I'm worried that Democrats are going to lose the House, they're going to lose the Senate, and then Biden's going to be a lame duck and not get anything done. And so, yes, he does need to get tough on corporate Democrats. Still, I do want to give him some credit because this is tougher than I thought that he would be. And so, I like that. Please, let's see more tough Joe Biden. All right. Between this and pushing back, of course, on the media and defending his position on Afghanistan, which was the correct one, by the way, pulling out of Afghanistan, ending that war, is probably one of the best things that he's done so far. There's no reason that we need to be in Afghanistan. We should have never been in Afghanistan. Pulling out of Afghanistan was always going to be messy, was always not going to be good. The Taliban was always, or somebody was going to fill that vacuum. And so it was a no-win scenario, and especially no-win for us if we were to stay. So there it is. So by all means, do more stuff. And by the way, when the media was hammering him about Afghanistan, he was like, don't care. Don't care. I did the right thing. I did the good thing. I did the right thing. Shut up. Essentially, and I like that. I like it when a Democrat actually shows some sort of strength against the media and doesn't cower down, doesn't back down in the face of criticism. And we saw too much of that, of course, from President Obama during his years where he was afraid that Fox News would criticize him. Biden just doesn't seem to give a shit. Maybe now I'm starting to see how he fought against Corn Pop, because I hear Corn Pop was a bad dude. Just imagine if Joe Biden goes after Manchin like this and starts pushing back. Oh, if only he would. Oh, if only he would fight to try to get rid of the filibuster. If only he would see that. If he does that, well, that's it. I'll be a Biden stan, at least on that regard. If he actually is able to pressure Manchin to get rid of the filibuster, of course we're going to see what happens. But if you're going to go in this direction, though, great. I want to see more of it. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.